The story of Simona: faith, perseverance, and God's favor. A young girl named Simona lived in the beautiful hills of rural Jamaica, nestled among lush greenery and vibrant culture. She was born into poverty, and her early life was filled with hardship, but she made up for what she lacked in material wealth with faith and perseverance. Raised by her father and uncle, after her mother passed away when she was just a baby, Simona learned early on how to be resilient. Though their means were meager, their faith was strong, and they relied on God's grace to get through each day. The people in her community would mock Simona and her family for their poverty. The children laughed at her tattered clothes, and even the adults whispered behind her as she walked to school each day. They questioned whether she would ever amount to anything. But Simona carried a quiet dignity, refusing to let the negative voices around her define her future. She often remembered her father's words, "Simona, you are God's masterpiece. Don't let the world make you forget that." Simona learned and excelled in school despite the teasing. Her uncle, a devout Christian, reminds her of the story of Joseph in the Bible, who rose from being sold into slavery to becoming a leader in Egypt. "Simona," he would say, "God has a plan for you. Remember Joseph? God lifted him when others tried to pull him down. You too will rise if you trust the Lord and work diligently." Years passed, and Simona completed her education. It was not an easy journey. She had to walk miles to school, often with an empty stomach, but she never complained. Her faith in God was unshakable. After finishing school, Simona dreamed of opening her shop. She saw a need in her community, where people could buy groceries and basic goods without traveling far. But how could she, a girl mocked for her poverty, start a business? Simona began by saving every penny she could from doing small jobs around the community. She cleaned houses, worked in the fields, and even sold fruits at the roadside. It wasn't much, but slowly her savings grew. She prayed every night, asking God for wisdom and favor. One evening, as she read her Bible, she came across Proverbs 16:3. "Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established." Simona took this verse to heart. She committed her business plans to God and trusted Him to provide the way. Eventually, with the little money she had saved and a small loan from a local pastor, Simona opened her first shop. It was a modest one-room building, but it was a start. She named it Simona's Blessings Shop, because she believed that the business was a blessing from God, and she wanted to bless her community in return. At first, business was slow. The same people who had mocked her for her poverty now doubted her ability to run a successful shop. They said things like, "What does she know about business?" and "That little shop won't last a year." But Simona didn't pay attention to their words. She kept her focus on God and worked tirelessly. She prayed over her shop every morning before opening the doors, asking God to bless every customer who walked in and give her wisdom in running her business. As time passed, people began to notice Simona's dedication and the quality of her goods. Customers began to come not only from her community, but from surrounding towns as well. Her humble shop became a trusted place where people knew they would be treated with kindness and fairness. Her business grew, and within a few years, she had saved enough to open a second shop in a neighboring town. With 2 shops up and running, Simona became one of the most influential women in her region. Her story was one of inspiration, a young woman who had risen from poverty through faith, hard work, and God's grace. Despite her success, Simona never forgot where she came from. She knew other women in her community, and across Jamaica, who had the potential to achieve great things but didn't know where to start. Many of them were still trapped in poverty, just as she had been, and felt hopeless. Simona believed that if God could bless her, He could do the same for them. She began hosting small gatherings for women in her community, teaching them the basics of starting a business. She spoke about the importance of saving, planning, and trusting in God. Her message was always grounded in Scripture. She would often quote Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. The women loved her practical advice and encouraging spirit. Soon, word spread about Simona's business classes, and women from all over Jamaica started attending. They came to learn not just about business, but about faith and perseverance. Simona became known as a beacon of hope for women across the country. Through her teachings, many women start their small businesses. They opened shops, started farming, or sold handmade goods. Simona's influence began to ripple through the nation, transforming the lives of women and their families. As Simona's businesses thrived, she remained deeply connected to her faith and her community. She reinvested much of her profits into local schools and community projects, helping to improve education and provide opportunities for young people. She remembered the struggles she had faced growing up and wanted to make sure that others had the chance to succeed as well. Simona's heart was grateful for all God had done in her life. She often reflected on the words of 1 Samuel 2:8. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. God raised her from poverty and blessed her with a platform to help others. As she continued to give back to her community, she knew God's hand would remain in her life. Simona's story became a testimony to the power of faith, perseverance, and God's provision. From a little girl mocked for her poverty, she became a woman of influence, touching lives across Jamaica and beyond. Her life showed that no matter where you start, with faith in God and hard work, there are no limits to what you can achieve. In her later years, Simona continued to mentor young women and pass on the lessons she had learned. She often reminded them, "If God can do it for me, He can do it for you too. Never doubt the plans He has for your life." Simona's journey was one of hope, a reminder that when we commit our work to the Lord, He can take the smallest seed and grow it into something beyond our wildest dreams. Simona's story reminds us of Psalm 37 verse 5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. When we trust in God, work hard, and hold fast to our faith, God will do the rest. Simona's life is a beautiful testimony of what it means to live a life committed to God, and her legacy continues to inspire women to rise above their circumstances and fulfill their God-given potential.